Okay, folks, by now you have probably seen my video in which I'm practically having a nervous breakdown describing how bad Goodyng the Polymath is. This is by far the worst Rippaverse book I have ever encountered, and it's inexplicable to me how writer Mike Barron could have produced such a mass of bland gibberish, but we are going to try and actually analyze this book now so that I can describe to you why it is as terrible as it is. Now, the first thing that I would like to cover is the opening blurb. Now, I already dedicated a video to the opening blurb. I am aware of that. But that was based on fixing the opening blurb itself into something that was more of a better opening blurb. Now I just want to read the blurb to you, and I want to focus on one word out of that blurb for this video. Cato Goodyng is the eclectic genius of Florispark. His Goodyng services came to save the day when Avery Selman's ranch was attacked in a blaze by the mysterious creatures known as the Devilings. But how did this man go from childhood prodigy to self-made man? This is his story, from underdog to hero. Okay, we're going to focus on this word underdog. And we're going to ask the question, how is Goodyng an underdog? Because I think when you look at the circumstances of his life as described in Goodyng the Polymath, you're going to find it yourself hard-pressed to describe Goodyng as an underdog. Starting with the fact that he's male, white, straight, and good-looking. This is not a guy who you would say has negative things going for him on account of either his demographic or on account of his looks. And all of this is very important in life. You might say that white men are getting reverse discriminated against these days, but let's face facts and say that that original discrimination has been attached to many minority groups, including women and LGBTs and non-whites. And Goodyng does not fall into any of those categories in which he would suffer any kind of systemic discrimination on that part. So he's in the majority group, and he's going to wind up with some life credit just for that. Next, Goodyng was raised by his married biological parents. When you look at the dinner table, you've got mom and dad right there, and it's his mom and dad. Now, this is important because it's not just important from a perspective of there being two parents in the household, although that is very significant. So significant that there's currently a book on the market now called The Two-Parent Privilege. And in that book, it describes how children who have both parents in their lives, at least, fare significantly better, according to a number of different metrics, than kids who have who are in single parent households. Now, this is not meant to demonize single parents, but it does basically say that having two parents in your life is generally speaking better than one. Now, it's not just having two parents also, though, it's also having the parents from whom you actually came, because in situations where you have, for example, blended families, and step-parents involved, where you have step-parent-stepchild relationships, the chances of child abuse in these particular homes are so much higher. They're ridiculously higher in some cases. And so it doesn't mean that every time there's a step-parent situation that that's bad for the kid, but the odds are bad for the kid in that case. So Goodyng is living in literally the ideal family structure, and he's going to receive the benefits of that. Moreover, he has an older sister. If you look at the dinner table, you've also got, in addition to mom and dad, his older sister, who is never named, but she's never really brought up in the story ever again. And to have a sibling just by itself is enormously beneficial to your development of empathy. So you are going to develop possibly into a better person just from having an older or younger brother or sister. But if you had to choose which of those kinds to have, an older sister is actually the best, because the older sister, on account of traditional roles, has a tendency to be assigned the role of a second mother to the younger children. And so it's almost like having two moms in the household. You get a lot more stimulation as the younger child because the older sister will play with you, will kind of raise you in this secondary way. So Gooding is receiving benefits from having an older sister. He's also lived in the same house for at least 6 years, or probably 9. And the reason I say that is because if you look at this picture of his house from 4th grade, and you look at this picture of his house from 9th grade, that's about a 6-year gap, you can see that the same front door structure is there, and you've also got the same truck sticking out in the driveway, which means that this is the same house. And so and there's no reason to believe that he's changed houses from the beginning of high school to the end of high school either. So basically, he's been in the same spot for 9 years. And that has a positive impact as well. If you look at student mobility, which is how many times a child moves around during his education, even moving once and being uprooted and having to form new friendships and get adjusted to another school, even moving once can have significant negative impact on a child's performance. So with Gooding being in the same place all that time, that adds a benefit to him. He also has had one or more teachers who recognized his genius and taught him at his appropriate level. So we hear the dinner table conversation where the dad asks, "What did you do in school today?" Reading, writing, arithmetic. "What kind of arithmetic?" "Calculus." I seriously doubt they're teaching calculus to 4th graders. "I'm learning limits, differentiation, integration, and multivariable." I call a little, just a side note, I call a little bit of BS on the multivariable part. That's really advanced calculus, whereas limits, differentiation, and integration, those are kind of more down towards the bottom. But in any case, yeah, he's basically being taught these way advanced high school level classes in 4th grade. And that means he has a teacher who's actually capable of teaching him calculus and has the resources to do it. And let me tell you, that's not common at all for any 4th grade class. You've got gifted kids being left behind all throughout the country because there just aren't the resources to teach these kids at the level that they deserve. Federal resources are not being allocated the way that they should be. And there are even schools who are doing away with gifted programs now because they feel that those are excluding kids, that they're not inclusive enough, that it's better for people to be in mixed IQ classes, which, somebody who went through gifted classes myself, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe not. So this basically shows that wherever it is that Gooding lives, it is in a good enough neighborhood to have a school capable of teaching calculus to a 4th grader, and that is one heck of a benefit there. Now, Gooding's parents recognize his genius, regard education highly, and approve of his being fast-tracked. Here we have the mom saying, "Why weren't we informed?" And you kind of wonder for a moment, is she going to protest the fact that he's learning at this advanced level? And he says, "Mr. Risk says to keep it to myself. The other kids might get jealous." And the dad says, "Well, I don't have a problem with it. We're proud of you, son." "Mr. Risk says he phoned you and left a message." You really should check your messages, dear. Why don't you call Mr. Risk and set up a meeting?" "What for? I approve. Done deal." "Well, to let him know we appreciate what he's doing." So here you see that both of Gooding's parents, both his mom and his dad, are in sync with what this teacher is seeing. They know that Gooding's a smart kid, and they know that he should be taught at an advanced level, and they are appreciative of the fact that the teacher is taking the initiative here and teaching him at an advanced level. And to have positive parental attitude towards education is an amazing boost to a child's success in school. If your parents believe that education is your best path forward in life, then you will succeed more at education than if you had a parent who thought, "Well, I never needed all that book learning." So basically, Gooding's got a family who is receptive to both his genius and to the special attention that he is getting, and that is an enormous benefit to him. Now, Goodyng immediately makes a best friend on the first day of high school. And I'm not talking about the kid who punches him in the gut. I'm talking about the girl who attends to him after he's been punched. She cares about his well-being and wants to know if he's okay, and they even walk home together on that first day. I guess it's a coincidence that she happens to be living in the same direction. And then later on, when he's going to college, she ends up at the same college. And so they wind up hanging out with each other in much the same way that they did throughout high school. So he finds on his first day of high school someone who's going to be a lifelong friend to him, or at least a dedicated friend throughout many years. And what studies have found is that this can be incredibly beneficial to your life. You can have a lot less stress and anxiety if you have a good friend over a number of years, somebody you consider a best friend, who will be your confidant, who will give you, accurate assessments of yourself, who will listen to your problems, etc., etc. To have a best friend in your teenage years can benefit you for life. And so basically Gina's presence in Goodyng's life is a benefit to him. Now, he is permitted by an authority figure to defuse a bully by himself without consequences. So here we see a teacher having had his attention drawn to the fact that Goodyng and Gina are late for class. He finds out that Ron just punched Goodyng, and Goodyng, when the teacher offers to talk to Hodges, who is the boy who punched him, he says, "Please don't do that. I'm not a snitch. I'll take care of it." And the teacher just says, "Don't do anything stupid." So the teacher is allowing him to solve the problem for himself. But look at the way that he chooses to solve it for himself. He takes a row of thumbtacks, glues it to this bit of padding, puts it on his stomach where he's frequently punched by the bully, and then lets the bully punch him again so that it shreds the bully's hand. And not only that, shreds it so seriously, apparently, that the guy had to leave school for a year. I don't know why that is. I mean, it doesn't seem like that is going to do that much damage, but this is what Mike Barron or whoever else is deciding to go with. So we've got to go with it. And guess what? There's no consequences for Goodyng at any point for having brought, sharp things into school to wound another kid with so significantly that he's going to miss school for a year. There's no consequences even in the form of a lawsuit from the family of the injured student. I mean, basically, he just gets to maim this kid and move on. Hey, bully problem solved. So, yeah, he's kind of got a charmed life going here. Number 9, he graduates high school as valedictorian. And this is basically the proof panel of that. Well, I don't know if you realize this, but many states offer public funding to the college education of people who graduate as a valedictorian. So in the state of Texas, for example, where this is all set, you would get your first year of college free on account of being valedictorian. So his graduating in the top spot has opened up opportunities for him. He is immediately scouted by a tech firm that pays for his college and then hires him. So he's at his graduation party, and up comes this guy saying, hey, I'm from this particular university, and Goodyng sees through that and says, well, I know you're not from the university, you're from a company, and it turns out the guy is from a company called Madwire. And the guy basically offers him a full ride for his master's degree, including room, board, and a monthly stipend. It's like, hello, here is your college education on a platter, and what's more, we'll just hire you right out of college and give you an office, give you a secretary, give you anything you need to do stuff for us. I mean, it's just basically handed to him on a platter. Then he marries his best friend, and they have a great relationship. Here we see the wedding, we see the honeymoon, we see her inviting him to have sex with her. Basically, we've got a perfect relationship going there, and there are so many benefits that you wouldn't even believe to being married in a good marriage. You get physical health benefits, you get mental health benefits. We're not going to go into all this, but basically look at the studies, they're out there. So he's married to his best friend now, and he's got practically everything going for him. And then he quits his job and successfully launches his own tech firm with no non-compete lawsuit from the company he left, making millions from his inventions. He basically realizes, oh, my contract has 3 years to go, but I can actually just walk away from it whenever I want. And yes, everything that I built it's going to be under their ownership, but I'm just going to create my own company, which he does, Goodyng Services, and he's going to create his own products, which he does, such as the Saver Saber, which infuses meat while you cut. And then he makes so much money off of his products that he develops this incredible tech facility for himself. Look at the high-tech stuff that's out there in the parking lot. My gosh, this is a multi-million-dollar company that he's got now. And it's like all of this just success after success after success just falls right into his lap. He even has a movie made about him. How one man has reinvented the world. He's like freaking world famous on top of all this. And what's funny is that there used to be a story called Hardware about a guy who was in a similar situation. The guy's name was Curtis Metcalf, and he was picked by Edwin Alba, his mentor, to go to college, get about 6 or 7 degrees, and then he worked for Alba's company, only to find out that he wasn't entitled to any of Alba's profits. And what's more, he couldn't go work for another company, and I'm assuming that means even a company that he created himself. So he was bound and caged by his contract, and that's why he created a suit of armor out of technology available to him and started fighting against Alba, and that became the primary contract. But not Goodyng. Not Goodyng. Oh no. He just walked right out of his contract into his own business, started making his own products, made millions of dollars. No muss, no fuss. So, I ask you, how is Goodyng an underdog? This is a kid who goes from underdog to hero. Where is the underdog in any of this? Yes, he had a high school bully attend to him for a while. Yes, he had to quit his job because they tried to make him do some things he didn't want to do. But everything else on this page is completely positive. This is not an underdog situation here. This is somebody who's had every good thing in life practically handed to him. So where do you get this idea that Goodyng is some sort of underdog? And what's more, how did it happen that somebody took Mike Baron's script, read that, analyzed that, and thought, this is an underdog story? Or how is it that Eric July communicated to Mike Baron that he wanted an underdog story, and Mike Baron gave him this? Because there's two different scenarios that could possibly be at work here. Scenario number one is that Eric July said, Mike Baron, you're a legend, and I want you to write the origin of my tech genius Goodyng. Take him from underdog to world-class hero. And Mike Baron says, great, except that sounds cliched to me, and you and I both know the Rippaverse isn't about cliches. Let's have everything go right for Goodyng instead. And then the poor Blurb writer who didn't get the memo on Mike Baron's idea is like, the script Mike Baron turned in doesn't feel like an underdog story at all, but I thought that's what Eric told Mike to write, so I guess it is an underdog story? And so the poor person just writes, what Eric told him to write. Scenario number two is one where Eric July says, Mike Baron, you're a legend, and since I haven't even thought up a first name for Goodyng or a subtitle for his book, write anything you want. And I'm not kidding about that, by the way. I mean, Mike Baron basically blasts out in his dedication page in Goodyng that Goodyng didn't even have a first name when he was given the character to write. So he gave him the name Cato. Moreover, on Facebook, he also confessed that he's the one who chose the title Goodyng the Polymath. I wish I had a copy of that Facebook post, but I don't, but it is out there somewhere. Oh, by the way, if you might have noticed that Goodyng is misspelled in Mike's dedication. It's misspelled all the way throughout Mike's dedication. Um, I don't know what to tell y'all. So, scenario 2, Eric July says, Mike Barron, you're a legend, and since I haven't even thought up a first name for Goodyng or a subtitle for his book, write anything you want. And Mike Barron says, great, I'll write a book about Cato, a boring polymath from a boring middle-class town who never screws up and can do no wrong. And the blurb writer says, I don't even know what the hell I'm reading. Is this supposed to be techno Harry Potter on Valiant? Okay, there's a bully in the story, and Goodyng's parents aren't rich. I'll call it an underdog story. And here is what really pisses me off about the whole thing. When I bought Goodyng the Polymath, it was because I wanted to learn more about this character. This is Goodyng from ISOM number 2. I wanted to know about this guy. I wanted to know about this guy who came running out of the desert with his robot dog to dash into a fire and to hand out a bottle of ointment and to basically live in this complex surrounded by robots. I wanted to know about this guy. I wanted to know about the guy who's on the freaking business card offering services to the people of Shadow Valley who are underrepresented, who are underserved by Fluorspark. I want to know about this guy. I want to know about this guy who's on the Rippaverse ethic, where, by the way, it says there will be no cheap multiverses that have altered versions of the same character. Well, guess what? This guy here is not the same as this guy here. All right? This is some Tony Stark wannabe who also works with the government to replace government services as opposed to being an augment of services that the government is not offering out to the residents of Shadow Valley. This guy is actually replacing the fire department services within Fluorspark, which already had a fire department. This is not the same thing. These are not the same concepts. These are not really the same characters, despite the fact that both are named Goodyng. This whole Rippaverse ethic is a sham, because we are not getting the same character across multiple titles. If you look at ISOM 2 and you see this Goodyng character, and then you go and you read Goodyng the Polymath, you are going to come away with the fact that, okay, it seems like there are two different characters on the board here. Same as with Brian Solari and Ingrid Valdez in Yaira number 1 versus Alpha Core number 1. They have the same names. They are not at all the same characters. You've already got a multiverse going on. I hate to break it to you, Rippaverse, but your clown show company has already spawned a multiverse of characters who do not behave the same way from book to book, depending on who's writing them. And that is wrong, and that is robbing your readers of the experience that you promised them. But what's really just blowing my mind is the fact that anybody could look at the life that Goodyng has in the book and think of him as an underdog. Oh no. No, no, no. Goodyng, if anything, is an overdog. And overdogs are boring. And that's why this story is boring. Because you wind up reading about a character who suffers practically no adversity all the way through. No conflict of any note. No growth of any note. No struggle of any note. It is such a miserably bland and uninspiring story that I can't believe anybody bothered to write it. And what's really sad is that that's only one thing that's wrong with this book. That Goodyng is written as an overdog rather than an underdog, and that nobody seemed to notice. So this has been my first review of the actual meat and substance of Goodyng the Polymath. I'm Mike Partika. Please do subscribe, and you will be notified when I will have future videos on Goodyng and other comics. And I probably will make one more video on Goodyng the Polymath, just to quickly go through most of the other issues that I've seen here and there uh, throughout the book. I don't expect much in the way of really in-depth analysis, but you never know. I don't know. I might break it down into one or two videos. We'll see how it goes. But I do expect one more, and then I will be moving on to other things. So, thank you for watching. I'm Mike Partika. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you later.